How do you create messages that matter? You as an entrepreneur, you as an executive in business, how can you make your message heard by the men and women that matter to you, by the communities that matter to you? Of course, the answer is thought leadership, but let's drill into that. I first met Dave Wetton, the former president of the American Academy of Management, when I was on my doctoral research program. And he came to the school and he said something that strikes fear into the heart of every researcher, every academic. What is your contribution to knowledge? And I commend this to you as a driving question in your search to create messages that matter. Research is the first step in that. I used to be a biochemist. I was researching vitamin A. As a management scholar, research should be no less rigorous. But in our world now, in the world of executives and entrepreneurs, research not only has to be rigorous, it has to be relevant to the work of practicing managers and practicing entrepreneurs, the men and women around you. So research is the first pillar of thought leadership. Writing, how you capture that knowledge, is also a pillar of thought leadership. There's also your ability to communicate that knowledge. And whether you speak on stage at conferences or whether you teach small groups of people in workshops, how you share your knowledge is also a pillar of thought leadership. So the three pillars of thought leadership are research, writing, and speaking. And of course they overlap, but I want to drill a little bit further into what I call the dimensions of thought leadership, because your research, first of all, has to be valuable. It has to be valuable research, and it also has to be unique to truly be thought leadership. Your writing also has to be valuable and unique. And if it's not obvious already, your speaking also has to be valuable and unique. So these two dimensions, we also have to explore. Value, how valuable is it and to whom? And how unique is it? How novel, how original, how new is it? And can it be shown that this is your unique work? There's a third dimension, and I wanted to share with you this amazing paper by Murray Davis, and it's called "That's Interesting!" Murray has done a stunning piece of work. He's studied all of the theories and ideas that have come out of particularly social science, which is most relevant to us in management and business, I guess. And he's asked right up there in the front, how do theories which are generally considered interesting differ from theories which are non-interesting? And there's some really interesting ideas. Let me try and summarize it for you. Murray makes a distinction between ideas that are obvious. That's obvious. We knew that. It's common sense. And he also defines something that's outrageous. That's outrageous. That's completely out there. It's no way that is relevant or useful here. But in this space between that's obvious and that's outrageous, there's this place called that's interesting. It's taken my attention from the day-to-day taken for granted things that I was looking at and made me stop in my tracks and think, oh, that's interesting. Let's take a look at that. So when you craft something that's interesting, it grabs attention by its very nature. A key dimension of your thought leadership is it has to grab attention. It has to be interesting. At the limits, it also has to be fascinating. So fascinating, it makes them think and explore, how can I use this? What does this mean? We need to make sure that the research that we're doing, that the writing that we're doing, that the speaking we're doing is interesting in a really significant way, in a very clear way. And let's drill into this. What is it? What is interesting? Well, thought leadership in Davis terms has consequences. You have to have consequences to the research that you're undertaking. There have to be consequences to the writing that you're sharing with people. There have to be consequences in the speeches that you're making, in the teaching that you're doing, in the workshops that you're doing, in the coaching that you're doing. There have to be practical consequences. And I'm reminded of Kurt Lewin, one of the architects of the social science movement. Kurt Lewin, who in 1943 said, "There is nothing as practical as a good theory." Sometimes you've heard this phrase, haven't you? I'm sure you have. That's just academic, meaning it's pointless. True theory has practical consequences. Insights alone are not thought leadership. What we need to have is your insights, your research, your writing, your insights with practical consequences. That's thought leadership. Thought leadership that says, this is new, this is different, this is unique, this is valuable, and here's what you need to do about it. This, I suppose, is another way, a deeper way of saying your work, thought leadership, has to be rigorous and relevant, useful, practically useful to practicing managers and entrepreneurs. So in a nutshell, what Davis says is to be interesting. Your thought leadership needs to take this kind of structure. We used to think this. We used to see the world like this. Now we know things have changed. The world is different now. And here's why. Explain why something has changed. And this is the missing piece of the puzzle for so many so-called thought leaders. In conclusion, this is what we need to be doing. These are the practical consequences of what we now know to be true. So much thought leadership, so many white papers, so many books, so many presentations, so many conference speeches do not do this. They don't share the practical consequences, what to do now. Your papers, your books, your presentations, your speeches, your pitches to gain attention, to win people over, have to follow this structure. We used to see the world this way. Now we understand that this is the way the world is now. Here's why, and this is what you need to do now. That is the full spectrum of how thought leadership needs to work from here on in. So here are the 3 pillars, but now we need to add that third dimension. Is it interesting? Interesting in Murray Davis' sense. Does it convey how the world has changed and what we now need to do to make use of that research, to make use of that data? Why is thought leadership valuable, truly valuable for entrepreneurs and executives? Because in almost all of your work, you are trying to build know, like, and trust with your communities. You have to attract new men and women into your community, whether that's talent to work with you, whether that's clients to purchase the services that you have, whether that's men and women in your community and there's no financial transactions at all, but you're trying to inspire them. They certainly need to know you, who you are, what you stand for. So your thought leadership really defines who you are. It defines what you do, and it also communicates subliminally to the men and women in your particular audience why they should care about what you say. Remember, we asked this question, how do we craft messages that matter? And how can we be sure they're going to be listened to? Well, they need to be valuable, unique, and interesting. So this is why executives and entrepreneurs particularly need to be creating messages that matter, creating thought leadership pieces. Partly it's about getting that relationship started with the men and women in the community that matters to you. Liking has no real issue here, because if you're communicating a message that matters, people will be attracted to you like a magnet. There's also this question of trust. Are you an expert? And how do we define expert? And clearly, if you've defined some unique research area of your own, you've captured a story in a book or a PDF, you've communicated that story through some speech or in a conversation, in a workshop, then you're building trust. Your thought leadership builds trust with the men and women who most matter to you.